Welcome to the SportsCapping.com podcast with free handicapping advice, odds insights, picks, and predictions to help you beat the sportsbook. And now your hosts, Jack Jones and Brandon Lee.
You're tuned into the SportsCapping.com free pick podcast. I'm your host, Jack Jones. Brandon Lee's back with me again today for our weekly basketball free pick podcast. We're coming off a 1-3 Wednesday last week. Brandon was 0-2 with losses on the Nuggets +3 at Utah and Ohio State +2 at Purdue. I went 1-1. I won on the Hornets +1 over the Grizzlies, but lost on TCU -4.5 against Texas. TCU won that game by 4. Line dropped to 2.5, 3 in most places on Wednesday. So I'm guessing most of the listeners won on TCU, but we have to grade it as a loss here since I gave it out at 4.5. That makes us 3-5 on the podcast free picks this basketball season in the first 2 weeks. Brandon's 1-3. I've gone 2-2. Brandon, it's a rough start to this basketball podcast. Let's turn it around for the listeners this week.
Yeah, definitely just had some bad luck here, and I'm pretty confident over time we'll be able to turn this around just like we did in the football.
Yep, our record is very good through football, and we're just trying this basketball podcast out. It's a little harder to, you don't get as much time to research the games because you were giving them out the night before. Because we're using the opening lines for Tuesdays and recording Tuesday night and giving you 4 free picks for Wednesday each week. And you just can't judge anything by a small sample size. So yeah, we're gonna try to turn this around for you guys. And how are your premium picks doing, anyways, Brandon?
Yeah, definitely going well over here. Really good in the NBA. Number 2 NBA the last 30 days and the last 60 days. 63% over my last 63 NBA plays overall, including a 72% 28-11 run over my last 39 NBA picks against the spread.
Awesome, man. I am number 1 in basketball at sportscapping.com over time, dating back to 2012, and number 3 in basketball this season, so having a really good season. Combined 5-0 Sunday and Monday, heading into Tuesday's action. So definitely turning it around here after a rough start to January on the hardwood. So I'm looking forward to bringing my clients some nice profits moving forward. All right, Brandon, give the listeners your NBA free pick for Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Indiana Pacers at a pick'em on the road against the Washington Wizards. I think this is the perfect time to jump on the Pacers and as well as fade the Wizards. Indiana has lost their first 2 games since Victor Oladipo went down to a season-ending injury. The most recent was their most lopsided loss of the season, a 32-point defeat at home to the Warriors. I don't think the perception can be much worse on the Pacers right now, and yet the books are begging you to take Washington with this line. Losing Oladipo was a big blow to the Pacers, being a serious threat in the East and making a run in the playoffs. But I don't think this team is just going to give up, and because he's out. There's still a lot of fight and a lot of talent on this roster, and I expect a huge effort here coming off that ugly loss to the Warriors. Wizards are headed into Tuesday's action, having gone 10-3 against the spread in their last 13 games, and I've been on Washington a lot during this run. However, this is the ideal spot to go against them. Washington has to finish up a 3-game road trip at Cleveland on Tuesday, so they'll be playing on no rest for this game. It will also be their 5th game in the last 7 days, all of which have been played at a different venue. Indiana's covered 9 of the last 11 trips to Washington, and the road team's absolutely dominated this series, going 23-8 over the last 31. Give me the Pacers in this one.
Yeah, man, I think this is a solid play with the Wizards on the second of a back-to-back. And 5th and 7, that's about as tough as it gets in the NBA. And I just don't know that I'm ready to bet on the Pacers yet without Oladipo. That's the only thing that's giving me a little pause. But the Wizards could still have enough left in the tank to beat them, but I definitely won't be on Washington in this matchup, given the terrible spot for them. So I'm going to root you in here, Brandon.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a very similar thing with Indiana that we've seen with Washington. All this 10-3 run with the Wizards has basically come since John Wall's been out for the season. They got way undervalued. Nobody wanted to bet on them, and ends up, they were the right side in a lot of these games. And I think that's how Indiana's going to be going forward.
Yeah, they still got some pretty good guards without Oladipo, so I think they should be fine.
They played pretty well without him, too, early in the year.
Yeah, they did. I remember that for sure. I'm going to take my free pick in the NBA is going to be on a total. I'm going to take the Jazz Blazers under 218.5. This number just seems too high to me when you look at the head-to-head series. The under's 5-0 in the last 5 meetings. The Jazz and Blazers have combined for 217 or fewer points in 11 consecutive meetings. They've combined for 213 or fewer in all 3 meetings this season. So this will already be the 4th meeting of the season between these teams. And, the more a team plays another team, they just get more familiar with each other. It always seems to favor defense later in the year when teams have already played each other a bunch. The under is 15-7-1 in the Jazz last 23 games overall. Under is also 5-0 in Jazz last 5 games against a team with a winning record. Those head-to-head numbers really stood out to me here, Brandon. So I really like this under.
Yeah, and I believe they played not too long ago, so you got some recency as far as like on top of the fact that they've already played 3 times. They're pretty familiar with each other, just having played each other. Lillard sat out the last game with a knee soreness. I would guess he plays, but you have to figure maybe he's not at 100%, and there's a chance he doesn't play, which would you'll see this number drop big time if he doesn't. Both teams are well rested here. I believe both are on multiple days of rest. I think that's going to help the defensive effort on both sides. Month of January, both of these teams playing really well on the defensive side of the ball. Utah, number 2 in defensive efficiency this month, and the Blazers aren't too far back at number 8. Both teams also rank in the bottom half of the league in pace of play. So I definitely would lean this way as well.
Nice stats there, man, on the defensive efficiency, and mentioned that they just played. They did just play on January 21st, so be about 9 days, I believe, in between, or 9 days since the last game. I really like this one too. I'm glad you like it as well.
Right on, yeah. I definitely feel like this number could drop. So, hopefully everyone listens early and they get it in as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that. It looks like it maybe opened at 219, so it's already dropped half to a full point so far. So, as of the podcast. So, what do you like for college basketball this week, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Butler Bulldogs -2 at home against the number 10 ranked Marquette Golden Eagles. We have an unranked Butler team that has lost 2 straight and are 3-5 in Big East play, laying points against a Marquette team that's won 7 straight, are 7-1 in Big East play, and ranked inside the top 10 in the country. Anytime I see something like this, I almost always am going to take the favorite when you have an unranked team laying points. And especially when, everything's pointing to take the other side here. Not to take anything away from Marquette, who's a really good team, and they got a really special player in Marcus Howard. I just think the Golden Eagles are pretty fortunate to be sitting where they are in Big East play. Their largest margin of victory in their last 6 games is 11 points, and 4 of the 6 games that they've won have been decided by 5 points or less. Butler's almost the exact opposite in terms of, how things have gone in close games. They're 3-5 in Big East play, but 4 of the 5 losses are by 8 points or less. That includes back-to-back 1-point losses on the road to Seton Hall and Xavier. This team could easily be like 6-2, and I think we would, see a little bit bigger line, probably closer to 4 or 5. This is just a better team than people realize. And I think, that's why they're favored here when it probably looks like they shouldn't be. Butler's very tough to beat at Hinkle Fieldhouse. They're 9-2 this season. And, Marquette, they're 18-3 on the season, but, 14 of their 21 games have come at home. They're 14-0 at home, 4-3 on the road. They have gone 3-0 in Big East play, but they needed overtime to win at Creighton. They won by just 3 at Georgetown and by 5 at Xavier. The most recent game they played was at Xavier, and so this will be the first time this season that they played back-to-back road games. I think that's an added challenge here for the Golden Eagles, and I'll take Butler to win this game outright by at least 3.
Yeah, I think you handicapped this one pretty well, man. It does seem like Marquette has just won every close game they've played, so I think they're not as good as their record for sure. And, Bulldogs have always been tough to beat at home, 9-2 this year, and Marquette's only played 5 true road games, and they're 3-2 in those. And you mentioned how close their 3 wins were, so definitely fortunate in those games. And Butler's won and covered 5 straight meetings in this series. I also like the fact that Butler has an extra day of rest here after playing on Saturday, while Marquette played at Xavier on Sunday. Now only has 2 days to prepare, also having to travel. So, yeah, you're right. Definitely maybe their toughest spot of the season. So, I'm with you here on Butler.
Yeah, and I actually forgot to mention that Butler's won 5 straight and are 9-2-1 against the spread in the last 12 against Marquette. So, a little extra bonus there.
Yep, won and covered 5 straight there.
Yeah.
I'm going to take USC +8 at Washington. The number just jumped out at me right away as being too high. I think it's inflated because Washington has been a covering machine of late. Huskies have won 9 straight games. They've also covered 7 straight games. And when teams go on long covering streaks like this, it's usually time to sell high on them. And I think their streak of covering ends tonight or Wednesday night anyways. And USC's just playing too good right now. To lose by more than 8 here to Washington. The Trojans have won 3 straight by 13 over UCLA, by 23 over Arizona, and by 2 over Arizona State. They had some key injuries early in the season, but now they are as healthy as they've been all year, and it's really starting to show in their play. They're 7-2 in their last 9 games. 2 losses both came on the road to Oregon and Oregon State, one of those in overtime. USC hasn't lost to Washington by more than 8 points in any of their last 10 meetings. So I think this game will go right down to the wire, and the Trojans will cover this big number.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit concerned, but I would definitely lean towards USC. The Trojans have only played, the 2 road games in Pac-12. You mentioned they lost 1 in overtime, but they also lost by 19 in Oregon. For me, I guess I'm a little bit concerned that Washington is just that much better than the rest of the conference. But, I definitely agree with you. When a team goes on a streak like the Huskies have, it's definitely time to start thinking about going against them, and this could be the spot where we start to see that inflation really come back to bite them as far as covering the spread. I probably still win the game, but I'll root you in here. I just not quite there yet.
Yeah, understandable. I'm not a huge fan of going against teams on long winning streaks either until that streak comes to an end, but at some point, I got to get in there when I'm getting a few too many points. And
right.
How bad is the Pac-12 this year, by the way? Wow,
it's not good. Arizona State is just one of those teams. It's like 2 years in a row now that they've started off great, and then they completely fall on their face and
get into conference play and fall on their face, where the conference hasn't even been that good.
Right.
But yeah,
UCLA has been bad. They had that stretch when the coach changed, and then they've went back.
Oregon's bad.
Yeah, Oregon's been better. I think Oregon's probably maybe the most underrated team right now in the Pac-12.
Yeah,
Oregon State's not terrible. I think they're better than people think. But yeah, overall, not looking good for this conference in terms of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, Washington. You just mentioned Washington's the best team in the Pac-12, and it's made me think about it, and I'm like, well, yeah, they probably are, but the Pac-12 is not great. But I mean, for sure, Washington's the best team at this point. From what
Arizona's been down. This is about as down as they've been in a while. It seems like
a long time. So yeah. Anyways, thanks for joining me again this week, Brandon. Hopefully, our picks fare a little bit better than they have these first 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's always fun to go over these games and, dissect the lines with you. And hopefully, we'll turn things around and go 4-0 this week.
Yeah, good luck on the Super Bowl, too, whatever you decide to do with it. I'm going to be doing a Super Bowl bet podcast with Jimmy Boyd later on this week. So that should be fun as well. You can find both Brandon and I at sportscapping.com or betfirm.com. Hit me up on Twitter at betfirmsjack. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Please feel free to leave a review. That'll conclude this week's episode. Join us next Wednesday for our Basketball Free Pick podcast.
Thanks for listening to the SportsCapping.com podcast. For more free picks and predictions, be sure to visit us at SportsCapping.com.